Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of a man.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is year 0. Today, Shane Hazel. If you're a fan of the Radical podcast, you may have already heard this episode. We did a swap cast, and he was able to release it before me because I was out of town all weekend. So I've been in preps for Renegade University for the last week, and did not get to release a podcast as soon as he did, but I have it coming now. So if you missed it, we talk about fatherhood, some of our experiences raising children, some of the things we've learned by being fathers and dealing with our children, and how to deal with them differently and separately as individuals, and how that makes a difference in the way that they react to you. As always, RyanBunting.com. For all of your graphic design needs, go to RyanBunting.com. Ryan Bunting does that thing, and he's also one of those things, and he draws a bit and makes art and shit. So for all of your graphic design needs, go to RyanBunting.com and grab that book of his. It's a true story. It's called Project Manicore. It's about these Marines that get stuck in hell and have to fight monsters. And then they come back to life and during the Passover. And, oh, wait, that's a different book. Never mind. Check out his book, Project Manicore. You'll like it. Thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. Go to the Libertarianinstitute.org and check out all the articles and podcasts we got going on over there. We also have a space where you can buy books. We have shirts. There's also all types of things going on over there. So we'll be getting that fund drive together here pretty soon. It's almost that time. So that we can keep our lights on at the Libertarian Institute and keep producing great material for y'all. So go spend some time at the Libertarian Institute, buy a shirt, grab a book. There's some great books over there. The Great Ron Paul by Scott Horton, Enough Already, Fool's Errand, book by Will Griggs articles. Also some Sheldon Richman, who is the king. So check it out, man. Go over to libertarianinstitute.org. Check out all the podcasts. Check out the articles. Grab a book. Grab a shirt. And be a good libertarian for us. All right. Enjoy the show. All right. I'm here with Mr. Shane Hazel once again. What's up, dude?
Hey, brother. Hey, can you extend the recording?
Yes.
Permission to me?
How do you do this? I know there's a way to do it.
It should be down at the bottom. I think
participants. No, that's inviting people. I'm not trying to invite anybody else. All right, close this screen. I'm so bad at this shit.
Here I am throwing a wrench in it already.
No, that's okay. Allow to record local files. There we are. That should do it. And if that doesn't work, I'll just send it over to you.
We're good now.
Yeah. Okay. I know I tried to do this like with Pete last time we recorded, and he recorded, and I had this issue with Richard Grove one time too, whereas he had started the audio and I tried to record on my end. I couldn't find the file anywhere on my computer. Like it just disappeared.
Well, so it records like some ridiculously long, like, you know, it has no context in terms of the whole file, right? Like I've done the same thing. I'm like, where is this thing, man? And just like, it's a hope and a prayer sometimes. You got to remap it to your desktop or wherever.
Well, even whenever I gave Pete permission the last time we recorded, and he ended up contacting me the next day. He's like, hey man, can you send me that audio? Because apparently he couldn't find it either. So I was just like, okay, it's not just me. Like when you're the guest and you're recording. So if you need the file, just email me or something. So, but yeah. All right. So we had a request to have you back on the show to talk about fatherhood some more and to get into some of the lessons that we've learned. And I've learned some really hard lessons having children at a very young age. My first son was born when I was 19. So I definitely wasn't mature or ready for children at that point in time, but he survived.
So. Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, man, it's like, I don't know what that is. Like that was one of my greatest fears as a young man, right? Is like becoming a dad too early, because like, I'll tell you, like my dad was he worked his ass off. And I mean, there was a lot of times during the week where, I wouldn't see my dad, but like, I knew what he was doing. He was out, busting it, trying to make our lives better in, 1, 2, 3 jobs, whatever. But when he was home, man, he was home. Like it was quality time kind of deal. And like, I was like, man, if I'm 19 years old, am I going to be, able to do that kind of stuff? Right. Like, am I going to be able to, be that good of a dad? Right.
Yeah. And I think that's something I ran into a lot. And it wasn't because I didn't enjoy spending time with my kids. It was, I didn't know what kids needed. Right. And so like, because I got my ex-wife, my first wife divorced me when I was in the military. So I wasn't around. We had 3 kids at the time. I was 21 to 22 years old, something like that. And so
you had 3 kids by the time you were 22.
Yes, I did. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know I didn't even know what a TV was at that point in time. I had one form of entertainment and it showed. Proof positive.
Well, yeah. I guess the good thing at that age of having 3 kids is having some energy though, right? Like I'm not saying they don't zap it from you, but like maybe, on the upside, if there are young guys out there that are going to watch this or listen to it, is like, well, man, like one of the things that you do have when you're 19, 20, 21 years old, if you're thinking about kids and, you're maybe a better spot than I was at that age, or more mature than I was at that age, like at least you got some energy.
Yeah. Well, and my thing was, I probably wasn't more mature than you were because, I was airborne infantry. So, I mean, it was just a frat party, and so it was one of those things that was, it was really hard for me to wrap my mind around like being a father. But before I went to the military, I was always wrestling with my kids, and like that was like our quality time. We were just on the floor rolling around wrestling. And what I didn't realize is going through the divorces that I went through and having the child support I had to pay and being financially in the situation that I was in, that I was stealing quality time from the kids. Much like your father, I was gone a lot because I was a truck driver. So I was gone a lot and working. And it wasn't until I guess my daughter was around 18 years old that I realized that she had felt neglected by me. And I mean, that hurt because it's like, I was never trying to neglect you. I was trying to just give you as much as I could, and all I could give you because the situation of the divorce and the distance was make sure that you had the necessities in life. And then when I did see you, those 2-3 hour conversations that we'd sit down and have and just enjoy each other's company, I thought was making that bond tight. Now, I never had this issue with my sons. I had this issue with my daughter, and it has caused friction, and it's really hard to deal with. It's something that you really have to pay a lot of attention to your different children's personalities to understand how to interact with them.
Yeah, I mean, if that doesn't say so much, I mean, it's hard to even know where to start when you're talking about, kind of catering to each individual kid, right? Like, right. And that's extremely important. I was going to ask you real quick, how old is your daughter now?
She's 21.
So, 21. If there's still, some of that stuff, until you are either an adult who's paying your own way for everything, or an adult who's paying your own way for everything and, have a kid, where that motherly, fatherly instinct kicks in to say, yeah, I got to provide the basics. Right. And so,
right.
Maybe it hits her at a later time in life. And I'll tell you, just for me, like my dad says stuff, or said stuff, even back in the day. And I'll tell you, like, I I'm still learning from the man, right? Like and a lot of the times it's funny as hell when, like what he used to talk about. And he's like, yeah, someday you'll understand, or maybe you won't. I don't know. But like, the older I get and the further into fatherhood I go, the wiser my dad is, even from an earlier state, right? And you're sitting there going like, man, I definitely, and the thing is that I didn't see it at that age. And so, like, I think there's hope even for, not just your daughter, but anybody who's got kids that maybe, your kids feel like maybe, I don't know, they're neglected of some sort, but, they saw you, they saw those long hours. They saw that you were, it's not that you were, out screwing off. It's not that you were out like going to, baseball games or, concerts or, just having a grand old time without them. Is like, you woke up, you got dressed, and you went and you busted your ass, and it's just, live and repeat a lot of times for, I think, most people, man. And I mean, I'll tell you, until COVID hit, I was on the road probably 3 weeks out of the month, and like those early years, you miss a ton of time. You miss the tuck-ins at night. You miss the bedtime stories. You miss the wake-ups. You miss, field trips. You miss all these things. And like, there's some stuff that can linger inside of people, I think, with like, a little bit of remorse at the end of the day. And I think, by the time you get to it, it's just, where do you find balance? Where can you find, happiness? And here's the other thing is, if the other side of that is, if you're always around, I think sometimes kids take that, for granted as well. Right. It's just like, you can be around too damn much sometimes. And if you're around too damn much, man, like, I think that might even be more dangerous than being around too little sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Because when I was growing up, my dad, he was working like 3 full-time jobs. So even when we were in the same house, I didn't see him a whole lot when I was real young. But when he was home, like it's like your dad. He would take me out to throw the football,
Right.
whatever. We'd go do something, go play basketball, go throw the football, whatever. And so mentally, the way I processed raising children as a father was my primary goal was to, provide. And then secondary was the nurture and the time, and that was like, and maybe making it a binary like that in my head was due to immaturity, because now I can look at it and go, oh, well, I could have done better about this. I could have been more, assertive in texting my kids during the week, and I'm still bad about it. I'm horrible at keeping in touch with people. Like my youngest son,
man.
My youngest son, if he doesn't hear from me for 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, he'll just randomly text me and be like, "Hey, Dad." And I'm like, "Oh, hey, what's going on, dude?" Like, because you get so caught up in the daily, strife and working and taking care of the chickens and gardening and this, that, and that it's just, you're always busy. You're never like stop to think, oh, I need to call somebody, and, and being a truck driver, you would think that I would have more time to make phone calls or something like that, because I could just hit a button on my headset and be like, call such and such. But my mind is like so focused on the road and just getting down the road, I'm not thinking about that. Now, I talked to a buddy of mine yesterday. We recorded and we were talking about the relationship between men and women. And I was relaying a story to him. And when I first started working locally here recently, my wife told me, she goes, "I miss you more now when you're at work, knowing that you're going to be home at night, than I did when you were over the road. Do you feel the same way?" And I was like, "No. Like, I know I'm going to be home that night." Like, it's just like,
it's maybe a little bit of a different perspective for the people who are still at home versus
right.
The people who are on the road, for sure. Because not sleeping in your bed, man, not being in your house, that's a different thing altogether, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And then I also recalled, like, when my first wife, she called me at work and she was in the middle of the day, and I answered the phone and I was like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And she goes, "I just wanted to call you and tell you I missed you." and I was thinking about you. Are you thinking about me? And I'm like, no, I'm thinking about work. It's like,
of course I am, buddy. What do you think I think about when I'm here? Oh man, nothing that a little white lie wouldn't hurt. But yeah, I mean, to your point about the keeping up with your kids, like even just sending them a text and all that kind of stuff. We wanted to talk about fatherhood on here, and my kids were that age. Like a couple, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, we bought them these tiny little iPad touch or whatever it is. Basically, it's not a phone, but they have a couple little apps and some set permissions. And one of the things they can do is if they have Wi-Fi, they can text or FaceTime me.
Right.
And it's been one of those things where sometimes at night I'll get a text from one of them where it's like, "Good night, Dad, I love you," right? And it's like just that little extra effort, like even like on their part. Like I sat there and said, why don't I do that? Why don't I initiate this kind of stuff? Like maybe it's our generation, brother. I don't know, but like it is. There are some cool things about like especially tech in this world where if you want to say goodnight to somebody, I think that's a really just a cool little quick way to sit there. Maybe you're on your phone before you go to bed anyway. I don't know, but like to be like, hey, I miss you. I love you, son or daughter, or whatever. And good night. Right. I hope you have a great day tomorrow, whatever. Right. And like, I think that's a really good thing. And, as we're talking about, it's probably something I probably need to implement in my own life a little bit more. And yeah, I'm like you though, man. It's like, you got a billion things going on, and a lot of it, you have to be super present for, because let's face it, man, like some of the stuff that, driving a truck, for God's sakes, operating a chainsaw, or, I don't know, some type of piece of heavy equipment where you're farming or plowing or turning fields, like you name it, man. Like what you're doing is a lot of times either accomplishing a dangerous task or thinking through, a dangerous task so that, at the end of the day, you're prepped and you're ready so that you can go and pull it off without killing yourself or anybody around you. And I mean, it takes a ton of focus. I don't think people realize the amount of focus it takes, not only to do that, but then like at the end of the day to come in and divorce yourself from that kind of stuff and carry on communications with people that absolutely have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like my morning routine is I get up, and for about the first hour and a half, I'm awake, I'm drinking coffee, and I'm reading. And my afternoon routine is I walk in the door, I grab me a beer, I go sit on my porch, and I have a cigarette and a beer. I'm like, just give me a minute. And my dogs, they're, I have 95-pound pit bulls that are under the age of 2. And so they think it's time to jump on me. And I'm like, get the fuck off of me. Just get off. Just leave me alone for 1 minute.
You gotta have some buffer space and time for sure.
And it's not like I have it driving home, because I live like 10 minutes from where I work. So it's like, coming home, man. It's like, usually my wife's like, can you go to the grocery store real quick before you come home? Or something like that, so, man. And yeah, so when you're with the kids though, you almost have to ignore. And that was like the hard thing. And I think that's what's hard for young people, is you have to ignore what your own desires are. Like you have to take into consideration how that focus that you're taking away from them at that moment that they're desiring that focus is affecting them. And I think that's really what my daughter was getting at. And I don't blame her for it, because I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm not a girl. I don't know what a girl needs. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's okay. Like if you say this and you mean it and it hurts your feelings, then I'm aware of it and I feel bad for it. I can't go back and change it. So all we can do is move forward, and she, as you brought up, she has had her own kid. So things have changed slightly as far as our communication goes, but she has had her own kid, and she, she's going to be able to see that as that child matures and what her focus or her husband's focus is, in that child's life. She'll be able to more identify. But at the same time, I do feel like, okay, like I learned something. It's just too bad it took me so long to learn that, you know?
Yeah. I think like if you take a step back in the ideal world, you're like, yeah, you know what, at the end of the day, I want my kid, whenever they come to me, whoever it is, right, to feel like they are the center of the universe, right?
Right.
And there are such nuance around this as well, especially like in the changing paradigm we're in, right? There's a lot of people out there, myself included, who really spend a ton of time at home now, right? Like I spend a ton of time in my office studio here, and it's like there also needs to be this understanding that, hey man, there is workspace, and there are things that, man, I got to get done so that you guys eat, so that we got, power and clothes and you name it, man. And that's a conversation that you got to have with kids. It's also a conversation, like us, man, we homeschool. So like my kids share a wall with me for, their daily life. And so, setting up those, those little rules and boundaries so that everybody's clear on what it is and, what, that time and space is. And it differs. It differs from, the time I'm, I come in here super early in the morning, till like my regular work hours are done, and then I start doing, podcasting stuff or, something outside of this, or, it's time to go out and do some work outside, or, just all these things. And it's, I mean, this is I think the kind of the modern father, like if you're struggling through a lot of this kind of stuff, it's probably because you haven't really sat down and thought about it, and you haven't really kind of come up with some guidelines. It's not that you want to like not see your kids during the day. It's not that you want to be this like android that sits in front of a computer or whatever you're doing at the house. It's that, hey man, like there's some real understanding of, deep, considerable work. Like there are, for different ways people think. Like, oh God, what was the book that I was reading, man? It might have been by Tim Ferriss, probably was by Tim Ferriss, but it was, talking about like the concentration of work in a small part of the day, for like kind of admin nonsense, right? Mm-hmm. And then really getting into the meat of your work and just, getting in there and absolutely crushing it for, maybe 2 to 3 hours, right?
Right.
And then after that, that really kind of almost wipes you out for, I don't know, 6-7 hours of the day almost. And that understanding that like that time where you're really just striving and pushing and knocking stuff out that really pays the bills, like that's time that you need, man. Like that's a time that I think, as a dad especially, that's something that's, really something, I don't know, maybe a lot of people miss, is like, hey, you need to work, and you need to be able to work self-sufficiently by yourself, even if you're part of a team, for a duration of time to really excel at whatever, your tasks are. And to be able to do that, man, you got to be oriented. You got to be, you've got to have some list of things, and you've got to be, somewhat uninterrupted during those times where you can just, you're going to do things that other people can't if you can do those things, basically.
Yeah. And, that's something that I really think about, is choosing the path that I chose to go down as far as work goes. Mm-hmm. Right. Some of it was just reactionary. I'm just reacting to things going on in my life, and just ending up where I ended up, 30 years into working, or however long I've been working. It seems like forever.
Yeah, when you're getting blisters as a young man, maybe 9-10 years old, yeah, it seems like forever, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, but also I've thought about like the modern era and raising children in the modern era. Now all my kids are, like my youngest son, he's in high school, so it's like we talk via text. He's busy out with his girlfriend, and he got a new car, and he's doing all this crap, so I'm like, all right, yeah, good for you, man. But he's such a a cool kid, like inspirational, because he's got this entrepreneurial spirit, and he's just, I mean, he's gotten in trouble at school so many times because he competes with the school. He goes and he takes all his allowance and he goes and buys candy bars and he sells them at school, right? Well, they don't like that because people aren't buying shit out of the vending machines, and then the teachers want to, like, the principal wants to call and be like, oh, he's doing this, and it's like, well, he's selling candy. I mean, it's not like he's just lacing the candy with LSD or anything.
Selling that sugar drug, brother.
Yeah, like, let him, like, whatever, man. Y'all sell candy too. Like, you're just mad because he's out competing you, and, so it's kind of one of those cool things to watch him and see, like, that spirit he has. But at the same time, I'm like, I look around and I'm, you're about my age, I'm 42, so you're right around my age.
41, yeah.
Yeah. And, we were like the last of the latchkey kids. So it was almost like we didn't need as much attention. We were out and gone, but today's generation, they're not out and gone and doing all the time. They're inside. And they expect that parent to be there, like whenever they want them. You're on call 24/7, And I'm like, man, I'm glad my kids weren't like that. I would kick them out of the house just like my parents did me. I'd be like, get out of here, man. Go ride your bike or something.
I think I heard somewhere where we were the least parented generation ever in American history anyway. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I guess there's an argument for it. A lot of people were, that was when the corporate woman was really, kind of taken off in America. I mean, you look back at the 1980s, they were always talking about that kind of stuff. And I mean, both my parents were out of the house, and we left by ourselves for the bus, and then we came home, by ourselves. And I think that started at like 7-8 years old. Right. And I mean, right. You just kind of like, you did that, you knocked out chores, if you knocked chores out, you got your homework done, and you had, maybe some time to go and chill with your buddies, go play some basketball or whatever you wanted to do. And it's kind of different. Like, I mean, I think my kid's probably going to be a little bit different than most, being homeschooled, and growing up on a mountain out here. They're going to be out and about doing some other different kind of things, maybe a little less supervised, but for the average, family that's out there, especially being a dad, like, remember what it was like, is like, I don't know about, how you or, other people, kind of try to keep your kids out of serious trouble, or even, just, consequential trouble. Is just like, the thing I tell my kids is the same thing that my dad told me after I got caught egging my neighbor's house when I was like 9 years old. Right. It's like, you need to ask your dumbass self, like, would you do this if I was standing over your shoulder? Yeah. And that, it struck me. It hit a chord. I don't know if it hit my brother the same way, but it definitely hit me the same way, or it hit me pretty hard. And I was just like, that is a really, really great question for especially a young man, but a young woman too. I mean, to sit there and ask themselves, would you do this if your dad was looking over your shoulder right now? And kept me out of a bunch of trouble. I don't know. I mean, there's all these little life lessons to keep these kids, safe. And really, at the end of the day, as long as they're not, hurting people and taking people's stuff, like, you're doing a pretty good job as a dad, right? And like, it's a tough world. And one of the craziest things we got to deal with now is, like, all right, growing up with tech, right? Like, if you putting yourselves in the shoes of young kids, and I couldn't put myself in the shoes of a little girl. I can put myself in the shoes of a little boy. I know what I'd be trying to search on the internet. And,
yeah.
Right. But like, if you can kind of head those things off early, but I tell you, I think there's something to a lot of what a lot of people are providing out there in terms of services and in terms of education for, apps and tech that you're not aware of as an adult that didn't grow up as a child with it.
So much of the focus of my podcast is to point out abuses of power and how bad things have gotten and the direction in which we're heading as a society. And it can be a real black pill. I've partnered up with Richard Grove to offer my listeners an opportunity to sign up to his Autonomy Course. The Autonomy Course is designed for people looking for solutions, people that want to shape their own future, people that are not willing to be at the behest of large corporations or the United States government or the banking system. The Autonomy Course is designed for those of you who wish to have complete control of the reins of your life, who are looking to be successful, to thrive and not just survive, to provide for your family by utilizing your existing skills and learning how to market and sell those skills in order to be your own boss, or learn new skills in order to leverage that into a new career opportunity. So if there's a job out there you've been trying to get or you've been wishing you could get, but you just don't have the skills for it, the Autonomy Course is the place for you to start, to learn how to land that position, to learn how to market yourself better, to gain confidence, and to be surrounded by a community of like-minded people that will encourage you and help you along the way. So use my affiliate links and go check out the Autonomy Course. It could be right for you.
Right. Yeah, I remember you were talking about how to teach your kids lessons, and I remember when my youngest son was really small, I would get home from work, and I mean it seemed like he would be in trouble constantly. He was just wild. He was just hyper. He's spirited, he's just gone. He's doing his thing. And I'd be trying to like lay down, like, here's how you discipline yourself to do these things. And it felt like I was spanking him like 4 or 5 times a night. And it was like breaking my heart, because it was like, dude, I spend more time disciplining you than I do enjoying your company, and it's kind of like that Jordan Peterson rule. Don't let your children do things that make you dislike them. And it was that.
Is that one of his rules?
Yeah. And 12 rules for life. It's like, don't let your children do anything that will make you dislike them. It's a good rule, if you ask me, because that was what I had to question myself, because I sat there one day and I was just like, I think I heard somebody say something and it clicked that okay, this is not working for him. Like, the way I'm disciplining him is not working. Like, we're going to have to go a different route, because it's breaking my heart. I don't like doing it. And he thinks I'm mad at him all the time. So what can we do that's different than what we've been doing? And so I implemented PT. And so, and I would put him in the electric chair or the push-up position until he hit muscle failure. Yeah. And I would just make him repeat, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is looking, over and over and over again. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is taking action despite the presence of fear. Over and over and over. And I just pounded these things into his head. And I remember after like 2 months of this, he came to me and he goes, Dad. And I was like, yeah. He's like, we haven't done PT in like 3 weeks. And I'm like, because you haven't been in any trouble. And it was like he enjoyed doing it. And I ended up having to tell him, go do it on your own then. Like, you don't need me to tell you to do it. If you like it, just go do it.
What age was that, do you think? I mean,
he was about 6.
Yeah.
Like
there. So, and to your point, there are phases, right? Like, there are like, like I have this really easy, like when they were young, right? Like, I could just get loud, and it for them, when Dad got loud, it was kind of calling down, fire and brimstone.
Right.
Like you could harness that inner Marine, and the clouds would roll in and lightning would start to strike, and the earth was about to shatter, and they knew, like, all right, stop whatever you're doing right now. Dad's really pissed off. And I kind of came to this understanding that, like, I didn't want to be like the corporal punishment dad. Like, I got the belt twice when I was a kid. And like for anybody that's gotten the belt, like for me, it was across my butt, right? And a belt isn't going to do any real physical damage. It's going to sting for a while. And we're not talking about lashings. We're talking about, a couple little, red marks, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I never had to do, like, I never really had that issue because I was like, man, I just don't want to get spanked with a belt again. It's, for one thing, it's just humiliating, right? It's just like, it's one of those moments in your life that you're not proud of. And like, you start to feel a certain way. And so like, I didn't want to be, that way with my kids. And I was super, I don't know, almost paranoid, like, especially coming off of, being a combat vet, like definitely don't want to be, stereotypical, like, like I'm drinking too much or something. And, if you're drinking too much and you're reacting, I think that this is probably a great thing to talk about in terms of like kids and discipline, especially if you're a young father with young kids and you're trying to figure out like what it is. Like, you can kind of just be scary when it's time to be scary, right? Like,
right.
That's okay. I would tell you, like, I wish what I would have done at that age was probably, instead of reacting in the moment, a lot of times, just not stop whatever's wrong. Be really, really pissed off. And that's fine if they know that hey, listen, I'm going to go take a second, right? Because I'm super, super pissed. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to address this. And like that time right there alone is enough in terms of a child's psychology to start, and I don't like the word torment because you're not looking to torment them, but you do want them to
They begin to process.
Yeah, reflect. Oh man, I did something so bad that dad had to step away physically to compose himself to come back. Right. So there's some, and that's the thing is kids are smart. We know kids are smart. They know like, hey man, dad is going out of his way right now to be better than what he could have been. And I think that goes so far with not only like little kids, but just people in general. Like just to be able to step away and divorce yourself from it. And like once, I'm not going to say like I never spanked my kids, like, but I'm telling you, like each one of my kids may have got spanked once. And it was at an age where they knew that they had really, really, really messed up. And I'm talking like physical pain to one of their siblings. Right. And that's like rule one in this house. You don't ever do that kind of stuff. Right. Like that's where you lose your rights. And then, as you transition into that 4, 5, 6, year old place, like that's, one of those places where I found a lot of patience, man. And thank God for, that revelation to be able to be like, I'm going to go and cool off. And I'm not going to say it happened every time. Like there are some times where it just didn't happen, especially with physical altercation, right? It's just like, nope, this is going to happen right now. And you're going to have some fury. But for the most part, like if it's something, menial and something that's not all that important, man, you're going to figure that out when you walk out into the garage or the back porch or the front yard and you just say, oh man, God, give me strength, like to deal with this in the right damn way. Please don't let me kill these kids. Right? Like you get to that point, like you come back in, man, and you choose your words more carefully. You're more tempered. They know that you're not playing around. And before you know it, man, you got kids that are 10 years old that you don't have to tell anything.
You don't have to say a word to them. Not
only that, but a lot of times when they do screw up, when they really like fuck up bad, man, sometimes they'll be the first ones to come tell you, right? Like, hey man, they'll come to you with tears in their eyes. Like, I messed up bad or whatever the case is. And that's a really cool place to be at that early, where you got open enough dialogue to where your kid trusts you enough to tell you when they mess up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what like was so difficult with me with my youngest was my other kids. I never had to spank them or rarely. It was such a rare occasion. I would raise my voice. I would cast my glance. I'd say, "Hey, if you keep this up, I'm gonna spank you," and they would all stop. Like whatever it was, but he's still not afraid of nothing. He's like, whatever, bring it, bitch. Like, you know, that's just his attitude. Like my daughter, I would be like, hey, and she would just start crying, like immediately start crying. It was like, okay, well that worked. You know, like, yeah. I didn't even have to like tell you what you did wrong. You already knew. Yeah. And so, but with him, it was such a learning curve it's what got me interested in looking at psychology. Was like, wait a second, like this, like I can tell him, dude, I'm going to whoop your ass. You need to stop now. Yeah. And he would, all right, yeah, whatever. And he'd keep going. It's like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, you know, like, I just want to choke you because you're not listening. Just listen. And he just didn't have it in him. But like I said, I implemented PT within 2 months. He was not getting in trouble anymore. And he had been in serious trouble since then. Well, one time he acted out when his mother and I got a divorce. And, he went and stole $60 from one of their neighbors. And his mom called me and she's like, do you know what your son did? And I was like, no, what did he do? And she told me. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. I was like, all right, put him on the phone. And he's like, hello. He already knew. And I was like, what did you do? He's like, I took their money. I was like, you took $60? I ain't even got $60 in my banking account. What you needed $60 for? It's, you know, like just made it feel stupid. Like you have no need for this. And ever since then, that's when I guess he discovered, well, if I want money, I can sell shit and get money. So he just became entrepreneurial. And so
by their own nature, man. And I think maybe, you know, we got about 7 minutes left. I think this is
not
much
time. I'm watching the clock for you.
A cool thing to kind of roll in. You know, you talk about being a dad and all this, you know, like not being around enough and disciplined, and like those are super important roles of the father, if nothing else. I think the icing, you know, for us is recognizing, you know, their passion and their gifts as individuals, right? And to be able to see those, or you know, let them, you know, encourage them to explore those things, because you know, like your kid, you know, if there's a market for candy bars or whatever the case is, and he's already found a way to, you know, start making money, like, hey man, you got a real gift for identifying markets for sales, maybe. And you know, to be able to do that for each one of their personalities, you know, to try to get to understand it and encourage it and love on them for it. And then, you know, have them, you know, teach you. Like, that's kind of where I'm at with my oldest for sure. And, you know, like, instead of video games or the phone or, you know, whatever it is in terms of apps, so like, it's also, you know, on me now where we've been like, hey man, why don't you go and, you know, use that application that, you know, I was talking to you about. Why don't you get on YouTube and learn how to use this app? Why don't you learn how to, you know, do this or do that? Spend your time improving yourself. Like, it doesn't have, you know, like games are games. And I realize like there's a stimulus going on that you don't even understand because of the way they're created. But there's also something that when you put in the work and you start from ground zero and something you're interested in, you start to, you know, hone a skill and build knowledge and use it in application, you'll be surprised. You know, this was a conversation I had, is like, you'll be surprised in yourself, you know, at what you create and how quickly you can do it and how far your story travels, right? It's just like, you know, if you start documenting what you're doing now in terms of, I don't know, Legos or jujitsu or whatever the case is, and you've been like, you're kind of an expert as a 10-year-old and you've been doing jujitsu for 7 years, you're an expert at jujitsu for a 10-year-old to give knowledge to children who are starting. How do you share that? Like, how do you start to take the things that you're passionate about and have some knowledge and some expertise in and give it to an audience of your peers? And I'll tell you, to start seeing the wheels turning, and now to catch him, either on a phone or a computer or something like that, where he's actually looking things up to, learn or build a skill set to take his knowledge and hand it out to other people. Like I'm like, I don't know about you, man, but I don't know. That's like 30 years ahead of where I was at that point. Like,
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I still haven't gotten there. I'm still trying to figure that part out, like I'm still trying. I'm still playing tag in the park,
Still good for you though, right?
Yeah, but yeah, no, you're right. And I think that's important. And that's one thing, like, I always loved writing fiction and poetry and things like that. And so knowing my own desire to be creative and how much it helped me, how cathartic it was for me growing up, especially like when you're going through these teenage years, when you're trying to identify who you are, you can't figure it out, which I think is a lot of the trans issue, but that's another subject altogether. You're having that outlet is really important. And if your kid shows some sort of creative outlet, why would you tell them, oh no, don't waste your time drawing, you should be doing math or English instead, or history? Like, no, let them get their outlet, man. That could be like, it's 10,000 hours to be an expert. If they get those 10,000 hours in before they graduate high school, you're like banking, bitch.
Especially in this day and age, right? It's
right. Exactly.
Listen, man, like, I know, like, my mom and dad told me at the time, like, hey man, video games aren't going to get you paid. And I'm like, man, video games would have got me paid. Like, I was first generation.
I should have spent more time playing Rampage.
Oh, damn right. I should have had a video camera on me doing it, so that when technology caught up, I could sit there and be like, hey man, like, I'm an expert in 1980s video games, right?
Right.
Like, Jesus Christ. But like, that's like, and not knocking my mom and dad, because I don't think, they ever pictured,
absolutely
a future this fast, right? Like, within their lifetime. And, that's kind of where I catch myself with these guys sometimes. Is like, all right, man, you want to draw, you want to write, you want to create stories? Yes. Create. And, the people who are, net producers in this world, instead of net consumers, I think are always going to be, better off. I just think that there's just a natural, and I say that with a caveat, if you're producing things that people actually want, right? Like, right. And,
but you have to produce all the shit nobody wants before you learn how to produce shit people want.
Yeah, so, absolutely right.
You have to make all the mistakes before you're good at it. That's why it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert.
Well, yeah. And here's the other part of it is, like, once you get to be the expert and you've documented getting to be an expert, like, that story sells.
Yeah. People buy that too.
Yeah. Because I mean, like, there's hope, right? It's like, oh, wow, look at this. Like, look at where he started and how things looked and how young and youthful and terrible this looks. And it's just like, you start to see, like, wow, man, like those 10,000 hours, like, people call that the grind. But the thing is like, when you love it and it's, it's just what you want to be doing and you find a way to do it, it's not work. Like, that's
the fun part.
That's the meaning of life, man. That's what you're here to give this world.
Right. All right. Plug, man. I know you got to go.
Oh man, no. You guys know me, radicalpod.com, and everything's there for you in the links, and it's being updated right now. I'm going to tell you guys. Are you? I'm gonna do it injustice if I do it. But anyway, yeah, Radical Pod, and really, I would be remiss, because if we're doing this crossover show, I'm gonna do the intro separately for this, but I want you to plug everything, Tommy, and tell everybody where we can find you and help you out.
Yeah, man. Year zero, the best place to find me is libertarianinstitute.org/year-0. You can also find me on Twitter at TD Salmons. And if they let me back on my
recover your account,
if they let me back on, we'll see what happens there.
And for my audience, man, Tommy's a great guy. This is the second time we've gotten to hang, and we have these. I'll tell you, this is the kind of conversation I love, man. It's not politics, and it's life, and it's real, and I'll tell you what, I've been leaning this way for a long time about just like, hey, fuck politics. Let's do more, local family, homesteading, just life stuff, man. Because I think a lot of times, whether you're a single parent or a couple or whatever the case is in this day and age, like, you're not going through this, you're not the first one to do it, right? Like, there are some of us that may be a step or two ahead, or maybe we can learn something from you. But I tell you, like, this is a great format to do this.
Well, we can learn a lot from talking through these things too. Like,
hell yeah.
Because we all have different experiences, and you might see something I don't see, or I might see something you don't see. So, I mean, that's what it's all about, But yeah, man, like I said, I know you got to go, dude. I really don't want to keep you late, but I want to do this. I want to keep doing this with you because people love it. People are enjoying it.
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm down as hell for this kind of stuff. What do they say? I'm down like 4 flats, brother. Yeah, really enjoyed it again, Tommy. And let's not wait so long to do it next time.
All right, brother.
All right, peace.
Later.
If you're gonna play this game of pick and choose, well, it's a game that was made for you to lose. It doesn't really matter how many times, it's the same old worn out stories, same old lines. They're all pointing dirty fingers in hypocrisy, bragging on their feats of mediocrity again. Never really making any kind of change, but they keep on getting re-elected, and I find that strange. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants out of taking our freedoms. Yeah, I said fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants out of taking our freedoms. What's it gonna take for you to see that we're living in a rigged democracy? People stand in line for the things that they've been choosing, paying no attention to the rights they keep on losing. But they all gather in the rallies and they chant their names, on goddamn well that it's all gonna be the same. Just 4 more years of war and taxes, 4 more years of them grinding down their axes. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Yeah, fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Cause we don't even need them, we'll never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedom. Fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them, we'll never celebrate the tyrants that have taken